Reagan Reed.
Would he take any responsibility if anything happened to these people? Would he feel at all that his decision was a factor in that?
The president was asked and answered this yesterday. I defer you to his
Thanks,
comments.
Caroline.
Reagan, since you're in the back row, I hear you. The back row hasn't gotten much attention in the last 4 years, so I'm happy to answer your question.
I can project. Does the president intend to permanently cut off funding to NGOs that are bringing illegal foreign nationals to the country, such as Catholic Charities?
I am actually quite certain that the president signed an executive order that did just that, and I can point you to that.
One more, Caroline. President Trump issued an executive order on increased vetting for refugees and visa applications.
Right.
Part of that order was considering an outright ban for countries that have deficient screening processes. Has the president considered yet which countries might fall into this category, or countries like Afghanistan or Syria under consideration for a full ban?
Yeah, so the president signed an executive order to streamline the vetting for visa applicants and for illegal immigrants in this country who are coming, of course, from other nations. It also directed the Secretary of State to review the process and make sure that other countries around the world are being completely transparent with our nation and the individuals that they are sending here. And so the Secretary of State has been directed to report back to the president. I haven't seen that report yet. We've only been here for a few days.
One, on the freeze in federal funding, who advised the president on the legality of telling government agencies that they don't have to spend money that was already appropriated by Congress?
Well, as the OMB memo states, this is certainly within the confines of the law. So White House counsel's office believes that this is within the president's power to do it, and therefore he's doing it.
Okay, so they disagree with lawmakers who say that they don't have the power to freeze this funding.
Again, I would point you to the language in the memo that clearly states this is within the law.
And all that happened on Friday night. The administration fired several inspectors general without giving Congress the 30-day legally required notification that they were being fired. I think only 2 were left at DHS and the DOJ. And then yesterday we saw several prosecutors, I believe 12, fired from the Justice Department who worked on the investigations into the president. As you know, they are career prosecutors, therefore they are afforded civil service protections. How is the administration deciding which laws to follow and which ones to ignore?
So it is the belief of this White House and the White House counsel's office that the president was within his executive authority to do that. He is the executive of the executive branch, and therefore he has the power to fire anyone within the executive branch that he wishes to. There's also a case that went before the Supreme Court in 2020, Scala Law LLC versus the Customs, Bureau Protection. I would advise you to look at that case, and that's the legality that this White House is resting on.
You're confident that if they bring lawsuits against you, those prosecutors who were fired, that they will succeed?
We will win in court,
And
yes.
did he personally direct this, given they worked on the classified documents investigation and the election interference investigation?
This was a memo that went out by the Presidential Personnel Office, and the president is the leader of this White House, so
it did
yes.
come from them.
Yes.
Caroline is
Caroline?
Sure.
Thank you. Congrats on your first day on the podium.
Thank you.
President Trump ended funding for UNRWA and also designated the Houthis a foreign terrorist organization.
That's right.
Both were decisions that the previous administration had reversed. So here's my question. Will there be an investigation into who gave the previous administration this terrible advice?
Well, that's a very good point. I haven't heard discussions about such an investigation, but it wouldn't be a bad idea considering that the Houthis certainly are terrorists. They have launched attacks on U.S. naval ships across this world, and so I think it was a very wise move by this administration to redesignate them as a terrorist group, because they are, and I think it was a foolish decision by the previous administration to do so. As for an investigation, I'm not sure about that, but it's not a bad idea. Josh.
Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. Can you give us an update on the president's plans for his tariff agenda? He spoke a lot about this yesterday, and there's a couple of dates coming up that he's spoken to. Number one, February 1st, he's alluded to both the potential for tariffs for Canada and Mexico, but also China to take effect on those days. What's he thinking about that?
Yeah.
Should those countries expect that?
Again, he was asked and answered this question this past weekend when he took a lot of questions from the press, and he said that the February 1st date for Canada and Mexico still holds.
What about the China 10% tariff that he also had mused about last Tuesday going into effect on the same day?
Yeah, the president has said that he is very much still considering that for February 1st.
Separately, yesterday he talked also about sectoral tariffs on, for instance, pharmaceuticals as well as semiconductor computer chips. He talked about steel, aluminum, and copper. What's the timeline on those? Is that a similar sort of coming days thing? Or?
Yeah, so when the president talked about that in his speech yesterday, that actually wasn't a new announcement. That was within a presidential memorandum that he signed in one of the first days here in the White White House on his America First trade agenda. So there's more details on those tariffs in there. As far as a date, I don't have a specific date to read out to you, but the president is committed to implementing tariffs effectively, just like he did in his first term.
Finally, he also was asked on the plane when he gaggled about the potential for a universal tariff. He was asked maybe about 2.5%.
Yeah.
There was a report about that. He said he wanted much bigger than that. Should we understand that these tariffs would add up? You know, in other words, you might have country-specific tariffs like Canada, Mexico, China. You might have sectoral tariffs like on pharmaceuticals, as well as a potential universal tariff on top of that. Do these stack on one or the other, or would one sort of take precedence over another?
All I can point you to is what the president has said on this front. The February 1st date for Canada and Mexico, also the China tariff that he has discussed. He rejected the 2.5% tariff. He said that was a little bit too low. He wants it to be higher. I'll leave it to him to make any decisions on that front. Phil Wegman.
What the Mexicans and
Phil.
Canadians have done so far, do you have any comment on whether that has met the bar and what he wants to see on fentanyl? Thank you.
I won't get ahead of the president again on advocating to foreign nations on what they should or shouldn't do to get away from these tariffs. The president has made it very clear, again, that he expects every nation around this world to cooperate with the repatriation of their citizens. And the president has also put out specific statements in terms of Canada and Mexico when it comes to what he expects in terms of border security. We have seen a historic level of cooperation from Mexico, but again, as far as I'm still tracking, and that was last night talking to the president directly, February 1st is still on the books. Phil.
Thank you, Caroline. Quick programming note and then a question on taxes.
Programming note.
Well, in terms of programming,
Sounds
should we
fun.
expect to see you here every day? How frequently will these press briefings be?
It is a good question, April. So, look, the president, as you know, is incredibly accessible. First day here, he wanted all of you in the Oval Office. You got a 60-minute press conference with the leader of the free world while he was simultaneously signing executive orders. I may add that's pretty impressive. I don't think the previous office holder would be able to pull such a thing off. So, look, the president is the best spokesperson that this White House has, and I can assure you that you will be hearing from both him and me as much as possible.
And then a question about tax cuts. The president has promised to extend the tax cuts from the previous term. I'm curious, does the president support corresponding spending cuts as some Republicans have called for in Congress? And will the new Treasury Secretary be leading those negotiations with the Hill as Mnuchin did during the first administration?
The president is committed to both tax cuts and spending cuts, and he has a great team negotiating on his behalf, but there's no better negotiator than Donald Trump, and I'm sure he'll be involved in this reconciliation process as it moves forward. Sure.
Caroline, in the announcement that you made last night on the Iron Dome, it said the president had directed that the United States will build this Iron Dome.
Yeah.
When you read into the executive order, it seemed short of that. It asked for a series of studies and reports back from. Can you tell us whether the president has directed this? And if he is as concerned on this issue, why the suspensions that we saw listed by OMB included so many different nuclear programs, non-proliferation programs, programs to blend down nuclear weapons, and so forth?
First of all, when it comes to the Iron Dome, the executive order directed the implementation of an Iron Dome. It also, as you said, kind of directed research and studies to see if or how the United States can go about doing this, particularly the Department of Defense. When it comes to the other question that you asked about those specific programs, again, I would say this is not a ban. This is a temporary pause and a freeze to ensure that all of the money going out from Washington, D.C. is aligned with the president's agenda. And as the Office of Management and Budget has updates on what will be kickstarted once again, I will provide those to you.
Just clarify for a sec what you were saying before on Medicaid. It wasn't clear to me whether you were saying that no Medicaid would be cut off. Obviously, a lot of this goes to states before it goes to individuals and so forth. So are you guaranteeing here that no individual now on Medicaid would see a cutoff because of the pause?
I'll check back on that and get back to you. John.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. As you know, in the first week that the president was in office, signed an executive order as it relates to birthright citizenship, trying to eliminate that. Now, 22 state attorney generals have said that this is unconstitutional. A federal judge has just agreed with their argument. What's the administration's argument for doing away with birthright citizenship?
The folks that you mentioned have a right to have that legal opinion, but it is in disagreement with the legal opinion of this administration. This administration believes that birthright citizenship is unconstitutional, and that is why President Trump signed that executive order. Illegal immigrants who come to this country and have a child are not subject to the laws of this jurisdiction. That's the opinion of this administration. We have already appealed the lawsuit that was filed against this administration, and we are prepared to fight this all the way to the Supreme Court if we have to, because President Trump believes that this is a necessary step to secure our nation's borders and protect our homeland. Monica.